At a certain point, this insanity needs to stop, and we all sort of need to realize what it is that's going on, which is that there is a Trump Russia story. There's just too much here, and it goes beyond whether you specifically think there was criminal obstruction of justice, for example. What I'm talking about is a much more overarching theme, and I want to be really clear in respect with respect to the defenses that sometimes people put up. It doesn't mean that Hillary was a good candidate. It doesn't mean that the Democratic National Committee didn't screw Bernie Sanders. It means only what it is. And to add to this growing list, the Trump administration is now refusing, just straight up saying they're not going to do it, refusing to enact new sanctions on Russia. Shocking, right? I'm truly shocked that Trump is not going to sanction the one country that he's avoided criticizing during the last 2 years, nor has he insulted the leaders of that country, which seems to be a trend for Trump in most parts of the world. These are the new sanctions that were voted on and enacted by Congress last year for both Russia's actions in Crimea and for Russian election meddling. And Donald Trump doesn't even believe that meddling took place, right? He just doesn't believe it. So it does sort of follow logically based on that harebrained internal logic that if he doesn't even believe that there was meddling, that he certainly wouldn't believe that Russia should be punished for meddling that he claims not to believe exists. But listen to how absurd this part is. The Trump administration is actually saying they don't need to do the sanctions because the threat of at some future point doing sanctions is enough of a deterrent to Russia. This is the same Trump administration that goes by the principles of hit 'em where it hurts, show 'em who's boss, law and order, we're tough, really tough, the toughest. But when it comes to Russia, they're saying, hey, you know, we don't need the actual punishment because just the threat of some possible punishment in the future is enough to get him to do what it is we want him to do. Burglars won't steal again, even if you don't punish them, because they know that if they do it again, they might actually get punished. Murderers don't need to actually be tried and imprisoned for the murders because the fear of a future indictment would keep them from ever murdering again. This is the logic of the Trump administration if you believe that that is a valid explanation for why Russia shouldn't be sanctioned.
And it's completely inconsistent, too, because after North Korea was developing their nuclear weapons capabilities and testing ballistic missiles, the Trump administration imposed new sanctions on North Korea, just saying that threatening them with sanctions was a deterrent wasn't an argument then, and it shouldn't be now.
They're only subscribing to this logic with Russian sanctions, because everywhere else they seem to say, well, yeah, maybe they want to do even more than sanctions, but sanctions are okay. It's always Russia, right? It's not Peru. It's not Papua New Guinea. It's not the Maldives. It's yet again Russia that gets the special treatment. Now, I want to prepare you for something else. There are two lines that you're going to hear more and more from Trumpists on this non-sanctioning of Russia. First will be, why don't you want better relations with Russia? Wouldn't it be good to have a better relationship with Russia? It's a red herring, okay? Of course, in any situation, we'd rather be friends with countries than be enemies with countries or have a hostile situation with countries. But Russia already did things that Congress determined there should be sanctions for. And now pulling out of thin air, well, let's just be friends. Everybody should be friends. Skip the punishment. That is a standard that these same Trumpists aren't applying to other countries. But number two, you're also hearing, and you often you hear it or read it in the trademark broken English that is the calling card of the Russian trolls on the internet. You hear sanctions don't work. They just hurt the people. That's perfectly legitimate to debate, right? And we can have a reasonable disagreement over sanctions as a tool. But to only choose to want to debate sanctions when it's to defend Trump not sanctioning Russia, then you've been co-opted. And in fact, speaking of these troll bots or Russian troll protesters, they're not all bots. They're everywhere online.
Yeah.
The same broken English that you see saying the FISA memo will destroy the Trump-Russia narrative any day now are the same folks coming out of the woodwork saying thank you to Donald Trump for bettering the relations between Russia and the U.S. They are everywhere. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying everyone who posts this stuff online is a Russian troll, but you can very clearly discern that this is a movement that exists online. We see it just on our own YouTube posts.
Yeah, and we covered it. There are like 30,000 Russian bots out there
Yeah.
tweeting release the memo hashtag.
Release the memo has been a big thing. And I know people always say, but David, I'm not a Russian bot and I use the release the memo hashtag. We're not saying it's like all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. That is a hashtag and a post being used a lot by Russian trolls and troll bots, but that doesn't mean anyone using it is one of those. So now what? Well, we'll have a couple of Republicans like John McCain and Lindsey Graham who will say they're deeply disturbed about the lack of enacting sanctions, but they'll probably not really do anything about it. And then, of course, you'll see Donald Trump continue to just say, hey, listen, there was no collusion, period, but continue to try to displace, fire, or force the resignations of anyone who's looking into that. That's the path forward.
And of course, this isn't direct evidence of Trump-Russia collusion.
No,
Maybe
it's
it's not even circumstantial, but it's one of those things that doesn't pass the sniff test.
Absolutely.
And we've seen that time and time again. That's why we're having an investigation.
No question about it. So yet again, it's not Peru, it's not the Maldives, it's not Madagascar. It's always Russia that seems to get the preferential special treatment from Trump. Or Saudi Arabia, we've also seen, but
Sometimes.
for completely different reasons in a completely different area of sort of geopolitical circumstances. The video you just finished watching was made possible by you through the membership program. You can sign up for membership at davidpakman.com/membership. We are viewer-supported independent media. You can use the coupon code IVoted17 for a 40% discount off of your membership.